भैया पिता पिता आदमी नहीं किया दूसरा
सकली है तोरो वाला डवा में वाई ठेसड़े देते तोरो लागवी देते
चलना ठिकाना हो
काय वासोपर चांदी काय चिकू ना गोटू है वा ये गया गोटू किती रखली किती रखली का मला खेळ ना थोडी तर नातो ना गॅरंटी ना रहती आती सोनारी दे बिचारी चल किती आली उठवा सागरिया काम का तू
सागर दादा फोन केला
मेल जाणारी पहिल्या वाली तू कोण आहे हाय हा अखिरती हो आहे
तो एक काम के को वाली मेरी मानता है सकली भाई है इनको में कोई दे पुराना भाई रे भाई है ओ इथे पुष्पा दे ए दुर्वाला ए बाबा ए खाली दुर्वाला बाबा मान ढोली ठोके होता मन जांच फोड़ी मन जांच फोड़ी जा आदि ले दादा सुनाई रही है मेरा बोंगा है जन सुनाता है आता रहा दादा दुर्वाला आता ए दादा अवतरे हाय हम दादी अवतरे वो दादा एक काम करा दे भाई मां हां साम कुराने तो ही का के साहित्य का ए ये कुराना मन मागे ना दे ए कुराना ए आई बाबा ने बाबा
Have you ever paused to think how something as light as laughter can actually be shaped by something as heavy as society?
It's a fascinating question, isn't it?
It really is. And that's pretty much the starting point for our deep dive today.
Yeah, today we're stepping into the world of Songadaya. It's this comedic tradition rooted in rural South Gujarat and Maharashtra in India.
And we're drawing insights from Dr. Jasvan Rathod's work, who's really shed some light on this.
That's right. He gives us a lot to think about.
And our mission, really, is to look under the hood. You know, we want to explore how social structures, particularly the inequality you find in Indian society, have influenced not just how this humor developed, but also its limits.
It makes you ask, doesn't it? When who gets to laugh and what they get to laugh at isn't simple.
Yeah.
Well, what does that tell us?
Exactly. Okay, so let's maybe start unpacking this then. Dr. Rathos kicks things off suggesting that this deep-seated social inequality in India creates an environment that's, well, maybe less fertile ground for humor.
Mhm. Especially when you compare it to places like, say, America, where equality and freedom are, at least ideally, more valued.
Right.
And what's really interesting is how direct he makes that connection between the social setup and, well, the very possibility of laughter itself. I mean, think about it.
Yeah.
In societies with these really strict hierarchies where joking across social lines is maybe frowned upon or even, forbidden, what kind of humor can actually flourish?
That's a great question. Can wit really sort of spread its wings there?
Precisely.
It does make you think. And he gives these concrete examples, doesn't he? Like, kids generally don't joke with parents, employees, maybe not with bosses.
Landlords and peasants.
Yeah, exactly. Landlords and peasants. He talks about these pitfalls on the path to wit. It's like there are these invisible lines you just don't cross.
Mm-hmm.
Does that resonate with you? I mean, just thinking about how social dynamics anywhere can shape what's funny or acceptable.
Oh, absolutely. Those examples, they really paint a picture, don't they? A society where humor seems to exist in layers, just like social status.
Right.
That idea of spontaneous, equally shared humor,
Yeah.
it feels pretty restricted by those power dynamics.
So it's not just about politeness.
No, not at all. It hints at, real social consequences if you step out of line. So a key thing here is how the structure itself can dictate who laughs and on what terms.
And then he gets into the role of caste, which is just so central to understanding India. He argues these caste differences, they breed a kind of hatred, almost.
Animosity.
Animosity, yeah.
Mm.
And that, in turn, dulls empathy. And empathy, he suggests, is the very soil where laughter grows.
Yeah.
It's got a powerful image, isn't it?
It really is.
How can the greenery of laughter bloom in the desert of insensitivity? Just for context, the caste system is that traditional social hierarchy in India.
It's a very poetic way to put it, and it highlights this profound link. Laughter, often, it needs some shared understanding, right? A connection, even if you're laughing at something. So if that ability to connect emotionally is weakened by division, by hatred, well, the foundation for shared humor just isn't as strong.
Okay, so building on that, let's look at where this Songadaya tradition actually came from. Dr. Rathod points to the Peshwa period. That's when tamasha, the wider performance art, and these early Sangadas started showing up.
Right, and this was a time he describes as having extreme religious fervor and also rigid casteism.
So given that climate, I mean, what kind of comedy could even exist? For listeners, Peshwa period, that's roughly 17th to 19th centuries, Maratha rule, known for these strict social structures.
Yeah, that context is so important. In an atmosphere like that with strict religion, strict social rules, the space for humor that was really open, really unrestrained, it must have been tiny.
So what could they do?
Well, that's the interesting part. What were the limitations on those early performers? What kind of comedy could they manage?
Exactly. The text suggests they probably relied a lot on careful gestures, maybe imitation.
Mimicking people.
Yeah, and decorating various types of costumes, trying to get laughs visually, perhaps. So it makes you ask, what was missing?
The freedom.
Yeah, the freedom to really comment on society, to maybe poke fun at the powerful. That probably wasn't really on the table.
That seems to be the heart of it. Without that freedom for social commentary, humor likely had to stick to safer stuff. More general topics, maybe less controversial things.
So the tools were more visual, more about imitation.
Exactly. Rather than, sharp wit or biting satire.
Okay, so tamasha starts in religion, but it evolves over time. It becomes more like social entertainment, right? It even gets royal patronage, becomes commercially viable to some extent.
It does evolve, and this is crucial, even as it evolves, think about who's actually doing the performing.
Right. This links back to the inequality.
Exactly. Even if some elite poets got involved, the performers themselves, overwhelmingly from the Shudras and Atashudras.
So the lowest rungs of the social ladder, those facing exclusion, oppression under the feudal system. Just so we're clear, these are the historically marginalized communities.
Precisely. And Dr. Rathod quotes Shankar Pujari, who puts it very bluntly.
What does he say?
He says, Tamasha is the art of Shudras and Atishudras, the strata who are excluded from all social development. Majority of the actors in Tamasha are from scheduled castes and nomadic tribes.
Wow. That really drives it home. It emphasizes who is actually creating and carrying this art form, which makes you wonder, whose stories were being told in this tamasha, and maybe more importantly, whose stories, whose points of view were being left out of the laughter.
That's the question, isn't it? Pujari's words really highlight the constraints on the humor in traditional tamasha.
Because of who the performers were.
And because they depended on the patronage of feudal lords, yeah. So it's very likely that Sangada humor stayed, as the text says, very limited.
Focused on what their patrons wanted to hear, maybe.
Probably. Things that would amuse the powerful rather than challenge the way things were.
Which leads to this really interesting idea about humor itself as a tool. Rathod calls it a double-edged sword.
Right. It can entertain.
But it can also attack a person, ideology, or undesirable practice by blasting satire. It can be sharp.
Very sharp. But for a long time, it seems like that sharp edge, well, it had to be kept hidden, sheathed.
Because of the artist's social status, they couldn't really use satire without risking, well, who knows what.
Exactly. Serious repercussions, most likely. So what happens when a really powerful tool like satire is kept out of the hands of the people at the bottom?
It silences voices, I suppose.
It silences voices, and it reinforces the existing power structures. When the people who know inequality best can't use humor to critique it, society loses a vital form of expression, maybe even a catalyst for change.
But things didn't stay that way forever, did they? The text mentions these turning points.
Yeah. Bolder humor started popping up.
Yeah, and things like the Satyashodhak jealousy, Ambedkar jealousy, and modern Vagnata. Places where they used irony and mockery, innuendo and slang much more fearlessly.
And also groups like the Rashtra Seva Dal, modern folk dramatists, they also started using humor for their own ideologies.
So that's a big shift, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. These movements, these platforms, they created spaces where those old limitations were challenged.
So the marginalized found ways to use humor differently.
Yes, not just for laughs, but as a weapon, you could say. A way to critique injustice, expose hypocrisy, rally their communities. It's a really crucial evolution in what Songadya humor could do.
And it really stands out against that image of the traditional comedian, performing these limited jokes for a long time just for modest entertainment.
Even though, as the text notes, they clearly had this innate creativity and quick-witted nature.
Right. It feels like their brilliance was being held back somehow. What does that imply? What happens when brilliance is forced into silence like that?
Yeah. It suggests this huge untapped potential, doesn't it? Imagine the insights, the critiques that might have come out if those artists had felt free. It's kind of tragic, really, the loss to society when voices get stifled.
But even within that traditional structure, we do get these little glimpses of maybe rebellion.
Yeah.
Or at least something more pointed.
Like that anecdote.
Yeah, the one about the election day tamasha.
Yeah.
You've got the pregnant wife, the angry farmer, and then the Congress sarpanch gives this absolutely shocking, vulgar response.
We will make her pregnant like a pig. It's jarring.
It really is. And on the surface, okay, maybe it looks like this crude, over-the-top humor. The text even mentions emancipation, maybe suggesting some kind of freedom in being that outrageous.
But Rathod sees something else there.
Right. He thinks it actually reveals the knowledge of the people of Songadya, stuff they learned from just living their lives.
So not just crude humor, but maybe a reflection of reality.
Yeah, revealed through a humorous style of sarcasm, making the Songadya seem like this laugh-out-loud playboy rather than being downright rebellious. It makes you wonder, is laughter sometimes the safest way to speak truth to power?
That's a really sharp question. Because, yeah, that anecdote, even though it's coarse, you could definitely see it as a kind of disguised social commentary.
How so?
By making the sarpanch look so bad, even through this kind of extreme humor, maybe the performers were subtly criticizing the corruption or the power plays they saw around them.
So laughter becomes like a safety valve.
Could be a way to let off steam, express discontent, but maybe in a way that felt less directly confrontational and, safer.
And then there's that other story, the Ambedkari Jalsa one, the scene with the Congress Harijan who has died.
And none of the Congress members come to claim his body.
And his wife's lament. It's described as poignant, but also darkly funny. Finding humor, even in that incredibly sad, almost absurd situation.
It's striking, isn't it? Taking a grim reality and somehow making it funny.
Can laughter be a kind of subtle education, do you think? Teaching without preaching.
I think absolutely. That anecdote is a perfect example. It uses humor to spotlight social and political truths in a way that really sticks with you.
The absurdity highlights the issue.
Exactly. The absurdity of the situation, turned up to 11 by the wife's lament, it just exposes the hypocrisy, the neglect that marginalized communities faced. So laughter here, it's definitely a tool for raising awareness, making people think critically.
Maybe more effectively than just stating the fact.
Quite possibly. It's that subversive element, revealing uncomfortable truths in a way that direct protest sometimes can't. It gets under your skin differently.
So, okay, we've spent a lot of time digging into the traditional Songada, which is fascinating. But we should remember, these things evolve, right?
Mm-hmm.
The text briefly touches on Jalsi and modern Bhaganatya as modified versions, where the Songadya have more freedom.
Which is an important development.
But even with the traditional form, it seems the limits weren't only about social hierarchy. The text mentions time and business constraints, too.
That's a good point to remember. While the social structures were huge, the practical side of performing needing to please patrons, sticking to certain formats that also shaped the humor.
So the move to more modern forms maybe represents breaking free from some of those practical constraints, too.
Could be. Allowing for a wider range of expression, definitely.
So stepping back from all this, what does this whole exploration tell us about, well, the power of a joke? And maybe who gets to wield that power?
It really shows that laughter, which seems so simple, is incredibly complex. It's tangled up with society, with history.
It really makes you think differently about the laughter you hear around you, doesn't it? Who's laughing? Why are they laughing? What's not being laughed at?
Indeed. This dive into Songadaya really reveals that humor is far from neutral. It's shaped by forces around it. It can be held back by inequality.
But it can also be this really potent tool.
Exactly. A pertinent tool for those wanting to challenge how things are.
So as we wrap this up, we've seen how this apparently simple comedy, Songadaya, has been so deeply molded by these complex layers, social hierarchy, history. It really does make you reconsider the laughter all around us, prompting you to think about who's laughing and the stories maybe hidden in that laughter.
It certainly does, and maybe it leaves us with this thought to chew on. If humor can be suppressed, if it can be limited by social inequality, what incredible potential for insight, for social commentary might be waiting to be unleashed in a world that's more equitable.
What other voices might we finally get to hear?
Exactly. What other truths might be revealed through laughter if those old constraints were finally lifted? It's something to think about.